do have the recording paused. Here we go. We have some attendees that are starting to join us. It's wonderful. Thank you all. We're just going to wait a couple more minutes before we start, as we have more of our attendees join us today. As a reminder, this will be recorded and available on the community link, which I will be providing in the chat in a little while. So we do welcome questions. We hope that you use the chat or the Q&A for posting your questions. We're going to probably most likely hold off until the end of the presentation to be able to address those questions. If you do have any other questions after the recording, please use the community link that we're going to provide for you soon to post your questions on the community, and our experts will come back and answer them. So we're still waiting for some more attendees to join, so we'll just wait a little while. In the meantime, if you're also interested in finding more of these types of events, I'll be putting that link into the chat as well. We're constantly adding more and more content for you all to consume and to engage with our experts so that you all get the most value. Some attendees. There we go. Put that in there. Well, we are at the top of the hour, so I'm going to welcome everyone today, and this is being recorded. I have shared the link in the chat for where this recording will reside after we commence today. We do welcome your questions, and today during the live event, as well as on that community link. All right, with that, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Hey, everybody, and welcome to our Ask the Expert session, where we're going to learn how upgrade customers can adopt the problem state model guided lifecycle using the migration utility. Nice, short, snappy title there. My name's Matt Lloyd. I'm the product manager for problem management at ServiceNow, and I'm in the ITSM group. And I'm also joined today by Spriha and Kapil from our engineering team. So hopefully between us, we'll be able to answer any questions that you've got during this session. Okay, so every good session for ServiceNow always has the safe harbor notice, just in case we cover any forward-looking information during this session. And what we're going to look at today, first of all, we're going to take a quick look at the problem state model itself. Then we'll look at what the migration utility is, how you go about installing it. I'll then do a quick demo of actually going through it and migrating an instance with that. Then lastly, we'll wrap up and answer any other questions that you've got as well. So first off, about the problem state model plugin. We introduced this starting with the Madrid release, and initially it was for new customers. And the migration utility is how upgrade customers will be able to get to that same plugin. But before we get to that, why would you actually want to do this? So what are the benefits of the problem state model? Well, there's quite a few of them. So we added some additional fields so you could actually document the cause and the fix for the problem. We added some granular roles for problem management. And we're going to go into these in a bit more detail in the next few slides as well. When a problem or when related work for a problem is completed, the person who has assigned that problem or problem task will be notified. When a change record completes, it will no longer close the problem and any of the related incidents for that problem. We introduced some settings that can be configured as part of problem management as well. And lastly, one of the big things we did was we introduced a guided problem lifecycle. And there's one more piece which is optional, which is a new integration that we've got with knowledge management. So you can create known error articles as well from the problem itself. Okay, so first of all, just a quick glance at what we've done inside the problem form itself. So we've added a whole bunch of different fields inside of here. So there's the first reported by field. So that's typically that will point to the record where the problem came from. So if you create a problem from an incident or from a case, it will automatically already point it back to the incident or case that raised this problem in the first place, but you can use it to point to any task record if you want to. It's really useful if you've got multiple incidents associated with this problem and you just want to identify the one that actually raised this record in the first place, so you can track that flow back. We also brought in the category and subcategory. We had those on incident already, but we didn't have those on the problem side. So we've made a copy of that. So there's a version of category and subcategory just for problem itself. We renamed the short description to problem statement based on some feedback that we had while we were developing the best practices for Madrid. Because when people are creating incidents, that it's more from their point of view. But when you move to doing problem management, you actually want to turn that short description into something that's a bit more punchy and noticeable for the problem itself. So just something simple as renaming it to problem statement tends to make people think a bit more about the text that's going into that short description. So they kind of make it a little bit more readable anyway. So that's another small change that we did. We added a workaround field directly to the problem instead of it just being part of the activity stream. We also added cause note and fix notes field, and they're not shown on this record at the minute, but they're in the related, they're in the sections that will be part of this form. We also brought in search results as well. So here you can see that on the problem itself, we're actually seeing the related search results inside of here. So you can find related knowledge articles, incidents, problems, and changes as well. So that's some of the stuff that we've done for the problem form, and we've done some similar bits as well for the problem task as well. And the other thing, as we get into the guided lifecycle, we've actually brought that into the top of the form as well. So you can see where you are in the life cycle of this problem. So that's what we've done for the problem form. Next up is the granular roles. So we introduced 4 new roles for problem management. First of all, there's the problem task analyst. This is someone who could be outside of the service desk, but you still want them to work on problem tasks. So for example, it could be someone in an application team, it could be someone in a legal team. You don't want to give them like the ITIL role because you don't want them to do as many other things inside of the service desk. So you can give them the specific problem task role that lets them go to a problem task, create problem tasks, manage the life cycle of a problem task, and they can read the problem, but they can't actually modify the problem that they're looking at. Then we've got some other roles as well that build on top of these. So you've got the problem coordinator is also a task analyst, but they can also manage a problem. So you need to be a problem coordinator to be assigned to a problem with the problem state model. We've then got the problem manager, who is a coordinator as well, and they can actually modify the properties for problem management. And then lastly, we've got the problem admin, who again is a problem manager and a coordinator and a task analyst. And that's a limited role where you, because basically what you would do is you would only give that to people who need to be able to delete problems and problem tasks. So that's not something you would normally do. You'd normally just, close them out instead. But you do have that option, similar to the ITIL admin role that we have on the incident side. And lastly on this thing, just one thing to point out is, and this is true of the migration utility as well, sometimes we refer to the assigned to field of the problem and problem task. One of the things that we've done is to have a problem assigned to you, you need to have one of these problem roles. So you need the problem task role to be able to be assigned to a problem task, and you need the problem coordinator or higher to be able to be assigned to a problem and move it through its life cycle. So when do you get notified when work is finished? So one of the things that we do is you have problem tasks on the problem record. What we'll do is we'll watch all of those problem tasks and we'll wait till they finish. So that's, finished could mean completed, it could mean cancelled. When that happens, we'll notify the person that the problem's assigned to say, all of your related problem tasks are done. That's kind of your cue to come back to the problem to see what you need to do next. We also do the same thing when you have fixes. And we have 3 types of fix that can be for a problem. So they can be changes. They could also be the Agile 2.0 defects and enhancements, and there can be continual improvement initiative records as well. But those 2 require additional licensing from other products. But if you've got those products, we just treat those as a fix for a problem. So when all of these fixes that are related to this problem are completed or cancelled, again, we will notify the person that the problem's assigned to so that they can then come back and see what needs to be done next with that problem. So it just means they don't have to keep coming back in periodically and checking the record. We'll notify them when it's time for them to do some more work. Okay, so yeah, something else that we changed as well is in the past, before the problem state model plugin, what would happen is if you had a change request, when that change request was completed, that would automatically close the problem, which would automatically close all of the related incidents to that problem as well. And talking to plenty of customers, we decided that wasn't the behavior most people were looking for, especially because we've got these problem-specific roles now. The problem team should decide when to close a problem. The incident team should decide when to close an incident. So what we do now is, again, because we're watching for those fixes, including changes to be closed, we just notify the problem coordinator that all of those fixes have been finished. So they come back to this record and then they can decide what to do from there. So we don't automatically chain to close the problem anymore and then chain to automatically close the related incidents. And then, yeah, lastly on this page, there's the configurable problem properties. So there's quite a few of these, but two of the ones that are quite interesting to most folks is by default, we allow problem managers, the problem manager role, to actually reanalyze a closed problem. And we allow people who have got the problem coordinator or higher role to be able to reassess a closed problem task. And the reason we do that is we treat this more like an investigation in the real world. So you've done all of the work possible, but maybe something else has come up later during that investigation or after you finished it, and it means you've actually missed something. So you want to be able to go back, use the same record to go back and continue that work with the history of the record that you've already got. Some customers don't want to do that. What they instead want to do is create a new problem task or create a new problem record. So we actually provide some settings so the problem manager can decide which roles are required to see the reanalyze button and the reassess button, so that if you want to, you can turn that off without having to change anything else. It's just a simple couple of properties that you can change. Okay, and then the last bit of this I mentioned briefly before was the this is an optional plugin for the problem knowledge integration. So if you've got this plugin enabled, what you can do is from the problem, you can actually use a related option to say create a known error article. It's a type of knowledge based on the knowledge templates, and it copies over automatically the short description, the cause notes, and the workaround from the problem into the known error article. So that when that gets published, that because it's a knowledge article, it will show up wherever you're doing knowledge searches. It will also show up when an agent is working on a record using contextual search, which you might know as the related search results, or within Agent Assist as well. And the other benefit is because it's knowledge, is when an employee goes to the service portal and they go to create an incident, it will show up there as well. So this can actually help to deflect incidents. So here we can see on the right-hand side, I've gone into the portal, I've started to create a new incident for something with my HDMI port is not working. And you can see just this little tag in here tells us this is a known error type of article, but basically you can see it's surfaced here. So I could click on that, read that. If the instructions for the workaround are something I could do myself, great, I could do that. Otherwise, if I'm not comfortable with that, I could go ahead and create the incident as normal, and then that will get handled by the service desk. So before we had the problem state model, what did things look like? So this might be how your system looks today, unless you've gone off and modified it. But there were 4 states that we shipped originally. So there was an open state, a known error state, a pending change, and a closed resolve state. And from the problem task, we had 6 states. So there was pending, open, work in progress, and then 3 types of closed: closed complete, incomplete, and skipped. And what we were finding was especially with these open states, because you could move from any state to any state, the state field wasn't read-only. It meant people were getting confused about where they were in the life cycle of a problem, especially because people often don't do problem as the full-time job. It's something they do, along with the other work that they do. So when they were jumping into the problem record to do investigations and things, they weren't quite sure what they were doing at this point and what they should do next. So that was some of the feedback that we had that led us to making some of these improvements as part of this problem state model plugin. So we're just going to look quickly at the new life cycle itself. We're not going to delve too much into this, but just to give you a high level. So there are 6 states now. There's new, assess, root cause analysis, fix in progress, resolved, and closed. And then you can see all these little arrows that take you back between those different states as well. And this is actually in our documentation if you want to go and read that. But basically, when a new problem comes in, you will assign it to someone who has the problem coordinator role. Then when you've done that, they can assess the problem and then confirm it's a problem they're going to be investigating, which would move it to the root cause phase, or they could mark it as a duplicate of another problem, which will move over any incidents that are on this problem to the problem that I'm a duplicate of, or I could cancel this problem. So that's kind of what you can do from the new and assess phase. Once you move into the root cause analysis phase, this is where you're trying to identify the root cause to identify a permanent fix for this problem. So if you've got the skills to do that yourself, fantastic. You can just fill out those extra fields about the cause and the fix yourself. If you need some help from another team, you can actually create problem tasks. So that's how you can assign those out. And we'll look at that a little bit in a minute, the different problem task choices. But otherwise, as a problem coordinator, what you're trying to do is once someone's provided that information back to you about what the cause is and what the fix is, you will either start the fix, which will move you to the fix phase, or you could again say this is a duplicate problem, or you're going to cancel it. And the other one we've done is instead of an on hold or pending type state, we introduced accept risk, which is a bit more stronger wording. So basically you're accepting the risk of not fixing this problem for now, and we'll ask you for a reason why as well. And the other reason we've done that is it means you can identify those problems that are where you've accepted the risk and easily find those and actually filter by those as well later on. Yeah, the next one is when you're in the fix in progress. So what you're doing here is you're creating or linking to permanent fixes for this problem. And as I said before, fixes can be changes, defects, enhancements, and continual improvement opportunities as well. So it can be made up of one or more of any of these, depending on which of those products you're licensed for. And at this point, you can, once the fix is done, again, you might realize that this is actually a duplicate problem. So you can still say it's a duplicate or cancel it. You can still accept the risk of not being able to fix it for now. If you find out, maybe you don't have the funds to fix this at this point in time. And then you can also resolve this once the fix has been applied. And then lastly, for the problem resolved, and you can reanalyze it if you want to from that point if other incidents get added to this problem, because it means you've probably missed something, or you can complete it to move it to be closed. And when the problem's closed, as I said before, a problem manager by default is allowed to reanalyze this problem to move it back to the root cause phase. So that's kind of a high level glance at the life cycle of a problem. So why a lot of people are asking us about the migration utilities, they want to move to this new life cycle, because quite often it turned out the customers who've gone and created their own customized version of problem management ended up with a similar process to the one that we introduced with this problem state model as well. And then I'm going to quickly skip through this one, but yeah, it's very similar for the problem task as well. So, a problem comes in, a task comes in, you can actually choose a type of task now, which we introduced starting from the problem state model. You can do a root cause task, which will ask you, what's the cause, who the vendor is, what the cause code is, those kind of things. Or you can do a general problem task, which is really the only type we had before. We just didn't even call it general. So this can be for anything else that isn't to do with the root cause. But otherwise, again, a problem task analyst can, assess the task. They can say when they're ready to start their work on this task. They can cancel it. They do their work in the work in progress. When they're finished, they complete it or they cancel it. And then a problem coordinator by default could reassess it. If maybe there's more information needed from this task, they can send it back to the assess phase as well. So there's a quick whiz through the two life cycles for problem and problem task. And that is in our documentation if you want to read more about it later. And I'll provide some extra links at the end of this where you can find this information as well. Okay, so that was the problem state model. So what about the migration utility, which is how upgrade customers can actually adopt this problem state model or look to adopt it? So we've done a few things with this. So a quick bit first about the actual utility and the problem state model itself. So the migration utility, it's a free store app that's available for Madrid or later releases. It helps customers to adopt the problem state model. As an admin on your instance, if you will be able to see and activate the problem state model plugin, which we're going to look at later in the demo, you'll be able to see and do that yourself if you're on Paris or a release after Paris. If you're on the Orlando release, you need patch 3 or later to be able to see this plugin directly. If you're on New York, you need patch 9 or later to see this plugin. If you don't have the required patch, you can still use the migration utility. It's just that the problem state model plugin is a development plugin, so your admin will not be able to see it, but they can request it via the ServiceNow High mechanism. We'll talk a little bit more about that later as well. There are a couple of limitations. Well, there's one main one, but I split it into two parts. So store apps today can't actually access domain separated values. So that means the migration utility can't tell if you're using domain separated state choices in your problem or your problem task. So this will actually count as a complex migration path for now. And what that basically means is if you're using domain separation, you'll probably need to speak to your account representative or maybe your solution consultant, because you might need some help from our customer outcomes or a partner who have another way of migrating to this state model as well, and that will, because theirs is more services based, they can actually handle the domain separated stuff as well, which us being a store app, we can't do that today. It's something we're hoping to fix in the future, but we need to be given that ability in the first place. So yeah, we can't do that right now. Okay, so when you actually, and we're going to look at more of this when we actually run the app, so I won't go through these in too much detail, but when you go into the app itself, there's 4 sets of activities. There's the introduction, preparation, migration, and cleanup. So in the introduction phase, basically we're telling you about the state model and the utility itself. And very importantly, we're confirming that you've practiced on or are practicing on a sub-production instance that's a clone of your production instance. And this is important because you want to know and make sure you've practiced everything that it takes to actually migrate your instance, including all of the data. And the other thing we highly recommend is when you're doing this, and we do tell you this in the utility as well, is to create update sets to help record the actions you take to resolve the modifications that we detect, so that later when you move to your production instance, when you're happy with the results, you can actually just reapply those back to your production instance and basically shorten the time it takes to run the utility on your production instance. During the preparation stage, not everybody needs this, but we know there's some customers who are saying, okay, because I'm moving to the problem state model, I want a clean slate. So I want to delete all of my existing problems and problem tasks. So we provided a mechanism through the preparation stage that lets you first or reminds you to back up your records, and then makes it easy for you to actually go and delete them all if you want to as well. So again, this is optional. You don't have to do this, but for customers who want to start from that clean slate, we've provided that option as well. The main part of the utility itself is actually doing the migration of your data. So we'll want, like, again, you should back up your instance first of all before you make any changes. The utility will detect blocking modifications on your system that you need to resolve, because these are things that will prevent you from actually activating the problem state model, or would cause you some issues if you activate it first. So you should really fix these blocking modifications before you activate the problem state model. You'll also map your existing problem and problem task states to the new best practice states. And the utility will help walk you through how you activate the plugin. If you've, and there's a little note down there, so if you've removed or updated any of the base functionality that's needed by the problem state model, and then there'll be an extra thing you do, which will be to restore that required base functionality. I'm not going to demo that bit today because that takes a little bit longer, but I'll show you what that means. And we've got more documentation and stuff for that as well that you can look at later. And then lastly, once you've done that, you've activated the plugin, we'll then bring up anything that's now a blocking issue or a warning modification that you should take care of before you migrate your records to the new states that you mapped earlier. And then once you've done all of that, there's some things that we don't need anymore from the older version of problem management. So you'll go through and you'll actually remove some of the older bits and update a few bits as well. So your instance will then be as close as we can get you to the base version of problem with your data. So just quickly, and again, this is all covered in some of the articles that I'll provide links for as well, and the migration utility helps you get to those. But here's some at a high level about some of the things that the utility will detect for you. So if you've extended the problem or problem task tables, or you've removed them, most of these things will count as we're not sure what you've done. So we had to call them a blocking issue, because it could mean that you've quite changed the behavior of problem management. So we don't want you to activate the new state model till you actually resolve these things. So yeah, or if you've overridden some of the dictionary values on the state fields, or if you've renamed some of the choice labels, these are just some of the things that we'll call out in this first phase, basically. But yeah, the biggest one in here is the domain separation. If you've got domain separation, we won't be able to move forward with the migration utility, just because, as I said before, the store apps aren't able to determine whether you're using domain separated records or values right now. And then lastly, there's some read and write access that the utility needs to specific tables to help during the migration itself. But we'll provide links, and there's also a blog that we can share out at the end of this as well, where we've got some KB articles that detail all of these things and what you need to do for each of these things to actually resolve them as well. And the same for the other types of modification. We've got 2 different KBs for these things. So we basically describe all the things that we detect and how you need to resolve those different things. And again, these are linked from the utility as well. Okay, so now we've got all that. You've seen what the problem state model is. You've seen what the utility is. How do you install it? So what you would do is on your instance, as your administrator, go to System Definitions Plugins, search for, you can just do Migration Utility if you want to, but the full name is Problem Management Migration Utility. Then, like you've done over here, you'll then see it listed. You can then just click Install, and then when the install screen comes up, click Install again. Wait for it to finish installing, then you can close that. And the one important thing is you won't see the menu for the utility at the minute until you log out of and log back into ServiceNow. So that's just make sure you log out and log back in once you've done this, and then you'll be able to see it. So once you've done that, if you, again, as the administrator, you go to Problem Administration, you'll now see the Migration Utility menu. And when you click on that, it brings you to the utility. The first time you go in, you'll get an extra screen where it just says Get Started. So you click Get Started, and then after that, every time you'll go straight to this screen instead. So now let's take a quick look at actually using the migration utility to do kind of a simpler migration for now, but just to give you an idea of what it is. And so before I actually do that, what I'm going to do is just show you quickly. Here's what the problem form looks like before I've actually done anything. So this instance I'm using is a London instance that I've upgraded to Orlando, and this does have patch 3 or higher on it. So as an admin, I can see the problem state model. So this is what the form looks like before I do anything with it. So you can see it looked a bit different to what we were looking at before in the screenshot that I put in the PowerPoint deck. But if I come over and we go to the migration utility, we've even included embedded help for different parts of the utility as well. So first off, say there's 4 stages. There's introduction, preparation, migration, and cleanup. And so we'll just get started on the introduction. And then again, at a high level, what we do is describe roughly what the state model is all about. And so you know that we introduce new tasks. We've got the new life cycle for the problem and problem task. And when you've read that, you just say mark as complete. Again, with the migration utility, we tell you roughly what this utility is going to do for you. And that, again, if you run into issues, you might want to talk to your account rep or solution consultant to get some help from them. And then lastly, the other important one as well is that you're practicing on or practiced on a sub-production or a clone of your production instance. So you know exactly what you're doing. And there's one extra note inside of here as well, which is, so this is where you go to the solution consultant side if you need to. Okay, so that's the first bit done. So what I can do is just scroll back up to the top again and then go back up to the menu. So now the introduction's completed. If I go into the preparation phase, see where I can back up my records, I can remove them, which will take me to the, this would take me to the actual record where I could click delete all records, and then it would ask me to confirm that. I'm not going to do that in this case because I want to migrate my records, but that's how you could do that if you want to. If you're not interested in doing this, you can just skip this entire preparation stage. So you could just say skip for that one if you plan on keeping all of your records. So then we move on to the main part of this utility, which is the migration piece. So I click get started for this. And again, you would normally go and do your backup first. I'm going to skip that just for interest of time on this demo, but I'll say that I've actually done that already. And then what we're going to do is we're going to configure, which takes us to the migration job to actually do the migration. So one thing we recommend to avoid inconsistencies is don't create new problems and problem tasks during this migrations phase. It's not the end of the world if it happens. It just might cause you, you might need to do more rounds of migration to update those records as well. We do recommend using update sets to record the changes that you make to make it easier to apply into production later on. If I just click on configure, this takes us into the migration job, which is the life cycle of moving through this. And you can see we remind you that if you haven't created an update set already, that you should probably go and create one. Just to make it easier when you get to the production side of things. And again, we've got the embedded help that tells you what's going on, and you can even click this and jump to the online documentation for this as well if you want to. Otherwise, this just tries to guide you through what's going on. So in this first pre-check phase, we detect blocking modifications before you activate the plugin. And I've got 2 in here. So you can see I've extended the table. I've extended the problem task table and the problem table. So I'll just click on this first record. And there's sometimes different actions you need to take depending on what type of modification you've made. So you can click on the KB to go and read more details about it. So for this one, because I've extended the problem task, what it's telling me is make sure you backed up your data and then just delete these extended tables, because again, it means we're not sure what you've done for problem, and we want you to be on the base version of problem, which means you haven't extended problem or problem task at this point. So what I'm going to do is click View Modification, and it'll take me to the record that has actually been modified on this instance. I'm just going to click Delete to get rid of this record, and then it'll ask me to confirm that. So what I'm doing is I'm deleting this extended table. And then go back. And then I'll do the same thing on the second one. View modification. Again, I'll delete this one. So that's both extended tables gone. So now that I've done that, I just, like as it says, once you've done things, you just click Run Checks. And the utility is then running through and checking to see what modifications it can now detect on your instance at this point in time. And if you've done everything, like if you resolved all the blocking issues, you'll then move on to the next phase. Okay, so the next phase is we've now, we're into reviewing warning modifications. So you don't have to do anything with these right now. Some of these, and again, when the KB articles that we link you to will tell you what you need to do with these and when, but these are more just for your information at this point in time. You could resolve these right now. And so there's some informational ones. Like in my instance, I added a new state choice, a dummy one, just to show you about mapping that. And I also overrode or created a new event as well. And I also messed about with the business rule and created a new client script as well, just to show you some of the scenarios that we will detect. But again, because this is just a review phase, I don't have to do anything with here at this point in time. So I can just click next. The reason we've done that is some people would want to take care of those things before they activate the plugin. Some people would prefer to wait until they've activated the plugin. So we give you that flexibility to decide which way you want to do it. So what we're doing now is we're into the mapping phase. So first of all, I'm mapping what's going to happen to my problem records. And if you hover over these, it gives you a bit of a clue as to what these are going to be used for. So the assign to field, this will only be used when you've got problems that are not new problems. So they've moved beyond the new state in the new life cycle. And they're not already assigned to somebody. So they're in the assess or later state, and they're not actually assigned to somebody, because to be in the assess state, they need to be assigned to somebody. So it's just like, who should these new problems, who should these problems that are not new be assigned to? And one thing to point out is the utility can work for you whether you've already activated the problem state model plugin or not. We actually recommend not activating it until you've used the utility. But just in case you have, one thing to point out here is the assign to user will be restricted to people who have the problem roles that we talked about earlier. So if you happen to have activated the state model already, when you come to here, you'll need to pick users who have one of the problem roles. So problem coordinator, manager, or admin. But in this case, I'm just going to use the ITIL user for now, just for this demo. And then we've also got, again, if any of these things are blank, any of these fields are blank, because sometimes these fields are mandatory depending on which part of the life cycle your problems will be mapping onto. So if the problem statement was blank, what's it default to? If the cause notes are blank, what will it default to? And these are placeholders that will tell you what state it came from. And the same for the fix notes and the close notes as well. So really, the only thing you need to do for the problem is tell us who to assign problems to when they're not already assigned to somebody. And once you've done that, you can click detect mapped states, unmapped states. But the other thing is down the bottom of here, we show you the states that we've already detected. So these are the states we already had before. So open, we've automatically mapped to new. Known error, we've mapped to the state code is 107, closed, but as a closed code of risk accepted. Pending change becomes fix in progress. Closed resolve becomes closed with a code of fix applied. And then the last one, it's a custom state, so we don't know what to map it to. So this is one where you would just come in and tell us, first of all, I'll just save what I've done. And then I'll scroll down to the bottom of the page again, and then I'll click on this. And then you just need to tell us what to map to. So this one, I'm going to map to just close as cancelled for now. So you just need to tell us which part of the life cycle you want to map these custom states to, and then update. And then when you've done that, you detect unmapped states. And again, yeah, the embedded help gives you some clues as to what's happening. And then we're doing the same thing, but for problem tasks. So I'm just going to use the ITIL user again for this one. I don't have any custom states for my problem tasks, so these are already pre-mapped, so that's nice and easy. And for this one, and again, this is this will be for problem tasks that aren't new, that aren't assigned to anybody. Who should they be assigned to? So now that I've done that, I can just click on detect unmapped states. And now we're at the point, so we've done all the basic pre-checks. We've done our mapping, so we know what to do. We're at the point now of activating the plugin. So depending on whether you've got Paris or Orlando with patch 3 or later, or New York with patch 9 or later, this screen might look slightly differently, and the request button might behave slightly differently. So because I've got Orlando with patch 3 or later, it says as an administrator, you can activate this. This message would be slightly different if I don't have, if I can't see that plugin because I don't have the required patch. Instead, what would happen is request plugin would take you to the ServiceNow Hi page where you can actually request the plugin instead. So the utility will work whether you have permission to or not, and it will direct you to the right place to do that. But the good news is because I have the right patch, when I say request plugin, it takes me directly to the problem state model plugin. So it's state model, it's got a much longer name, but this is the plugin I need to activate. And again, you see inside of here, because I've got the right patch, it tells me that you should use the migration utility before you activate this. So what I can do now is I can just, again, I can look over here and see for this that I just need to activate this plugin. So I just go to activate. And I'm not going to load demo data because we're going to migrate the records that we've already got for our problem. So I'm just going to click activate. And we'll just wait a few seconds for this plugin to be activated on this instance. And while I'm waiting for that, if Spreha or Kapil, if there's anything else you'd like to add during this first bit, feel free while we're waiting.
No, Matt, nothing right now. There are a few questions coming up in Q&A, but maybe we'll answer it at the end of the presentation.
Sounds perfect. Thanks, Spreha. Yeah, we'll get back to you guys at the end of the session. What I wanted to do was cover off the slides because there was a few of them, do the demo, and then wrap up a couple of bits, and then we'll dive more into those questions that you've got. And so activating this plugin is basically moving us to the new world of problem management with all those fields that we talked about before, with that new behavior of the notifications, with the new roles. It's basically setting all of that up right now in the instance. And then when that's done, basically what we'll be able to do then is start migrating our records. And really by migrate the records, what we mean is we're updating the states of the problems and the problem tasks and using the mappings that you defined with the utility earlier on. So we're just basically we're updating to the new states. That's what we mean by migrating the records.
And the only point to add here, Matt, is the customers who are lower than New York patch 9 or Orlando patch 3 will have to get it activated through Hi.
That's right. Yeah, thanks, Spreha. Yeah, exactly. So when you saw the request plugin button, it would actually take you to Hi, to the plugin request page. And then you just need to put in the name of the plugin that we'll tell you about on the actual our plugin page itself. So you just need to put those details into that request and schedule that to happen. And it's because before those patches, it was a development plugin. So you couldn't actually activate it yourselves as an admin on your system. So if you can, it's better to be on the required patch because it will make your process for upgrading and migrating much simpler if you can get that patch onto your system first of all. Okay, so let's close and refresh that, and then the status should change to active. Yeah, thanks, Priya. And if you've got any more pearls of wisdom like that, feel free to jump in as we go along.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so now the plugin's active. Fantastic. And so what I'm going to do now is go back to the migration utility. And now you can see that we detected that the plugin is activated. And all we need to do now is click next because we've finished activating this. And once you've activated the plugin, you can't go back to an earlier life cycle or earlier part of this process just because there's nowhere to go back to in that from this point. So you can only go forward from this point once you've activated the plugin. So we go next. And if you'd modified any of the required base functionality for problem management, you would actually go through that extra phase that I'll show you about in the slides afterwards. And what that would basically do is it would walk you through or ask you to restore the base functionality, to basically to repair the plugins in a specific order, which restores that base functionality that we need to move forward as well. And again, you know, you're reminded to create update sets as you go as you need to. And at this point, we're now resolving blocking and warning modifications before we migrate our records. So I've got 3 things inside of here. And so one's a business rule, and then there's 2 things. So as part of the problem lifecycle and problem task lifecycle, we've moved to using the state model, which restricts which states you can move from and to in the problem and the problem task. So we just need to disable those. So I'm going to first click on this first business rule. And we're saying this has been added. So again, now I can click on this knowledge article. And so we tell you a lot more information inside of here, but it just says, you know, for a business rule, I just need to deactivate it. So these pages will tell you exactly what you need to do to resolve these issues. So what I need to do here is just go to view that modification. And uncheck the active flag and then update this record. And then I'm going to do the same on these other 2. So these are both to do with the state model. So I'm going to click on these, and when you click on this, it tells you specifically because it knows exactly what we need to do in this state. And so it just says, you know, you need to deactivate this. So I just need to go to view modification again for both of these and uncheck active. So that's one. And I'll do the other one. And you can see down here, these are the rules that we're applying that mean you can only move into a state from certain other states in the first place. So at the end, after you've finished everything and you're doing the cleanup, you'll reactivate these state models. But the reason we're deactivating them is if you don't do this, we won't be able to update the records from one state to another state because the old states don't exist. So you won't be able to transition from the old state to the new state. So you need to disable these rules first to allow us to go from any old state to the new best practice states. And then what we'll do is we'll look at the warning modifications. And inside of here, 3 of these are to do with access control. And there's one which is to do with a client script. So I'll click on the client script. And again, for this one, we can just see what it says. But for a client script, really what it's saying is just deactivate the client script that you've got. You can delete them as well, but we're recommending deactivating in these scenarios just to make sure you don't lose any functionality. You can keep it around and just deactivate it while you're doing the migration. So I'm just going to deactivate this client script. And then we'll run checks. So again, we're detecting now that you've done all these things, what's left to do on your instance to tidy it up. So you might have a lot more things in here depending on how many modifications you've made to your base instance. So now we've got no blocking issues left. That's good. We've got 3 warnings. And for these access or role related things, these are system generated things. So these aren't things we can automatically whitelist and ignore. So what we're going to do for these is we're going to just say, okay, these are fine. I don't need to do anything with these because we actually have specific access control functionality for the problem and problem task and the new rules that we've already defined that will kind of supersede these. So what we're going to do is just click on this first row and hold shift and go down 2 more rows to highlight all of these. And we're just going to say that we verified these. So we don't need to do anything else with them. We'll just say, yeah, we verified that these 3 things are okay. And again, these are documented in the KB articles as well. And then I'll click, and then there's the informational, which is just telling us about, I created a new event. This event won't change anything. This is like an additional thing on top of what we've already got. So it doesn't impact the functionality at all. So I can just then say run checks. Okay, cool. So we finished all of that. So now we're ready to migrate our records. So if you've got a lot of records, this could take a bit longer, but you click on migrate active records. We'll just confirm that you want to do this. And then when you say okay, you'll see like a progress bar. So mine's going to be fast because I don't have tons of records in my instance. But if you had a lot more records, this would take a bit longer. And if for some reason you have to navigate away from here or your browser gets restarted, you can just come back into this utility the same way we did before, click migrate active records, and it'll bring you to this same screen if it's in process right now. So now that all these are done, I can say okay. And then the reason we don't take you to the next stage automatically is just in case someone happened to create any active records in the background. So we make you click migrate active records again. If there are no more records to migrate, you move to the inactive records. And this could take a bit longer as well, depending on how much historic data you've got. So I'll just go to migrate my inactive records. And the same deal as before, if this gets interrupted, you can come back to the same point and carry on, because it runs as a kind of a job in the background, basically. And so now I say migrate inactive records, and that's it. All our records are done, migrated. We finished the main part of the job, and I can click on here to see what my records are. So I've got some in the new state, I've got some in the fix and progress state, and I've got some in the closed state. So you can see now we have a closed state and the resolution code, which is why we referred to both things before. And you can see that this, my unmapped one, basically mapped over to closed as cancelled. So yeah, that's roughly what we're doing there. And so once you've finished all of this, you just click finish, which will return you back to the migration utility itself. And now I can just mark this as complete because I'm done with it. I've done all my records, I've activated the plugin, all that stuff's done and good. And now that's done. So if I come back up to the home page again, what we need to do is the cleanup step. So if I go into get started, the first thing we're going to do is go and reactivate those state models. If you don't do this, you might find that you get some different choices that you can make. And the way I'm going to do this, I'm just going to multi-select to activate these again. So I'm just going to activate both of these at the same time. And so when you're in the problem, you might see more choices that you can make than the ones that we show in the life cycle. It's because we actually rely on this state model as well to do that. Now that I've done those, I can just mark that as complete. With the same with the old menus. So over here, you'll see there'll be some old module menus, the pending and known errors. We track known, not ending, pending is one of the ones that will disappear. So I'll just come over and configure removing the old module menus. Oh yeah, known errors is the old one because we've got a new way of doing known errors now. So I just come in and I'm going to make both of those inactive. And now that I've done that, they disappear from the menu over here, and now they are done. And then we're going to remove old UI actions as well. So we had 4 of those. And so these would have covered things like closing the problem, resolving all the incidents, posting news, which is something we don't use anymore, and also posting knowledge. Instead, we do this with the problem knowledge plugin that we talked about before with the create known error articles. So I've disabled those. Next up is business rules. So we're getting rid of the old business rules that we don't need anymore. Same deal again, just set all of these to false. And if you click on one of these, it'll actually give you more targeted information inside of here. I'm just, to save time, I'm just disabling all of these quickly, but it'll take you to the same action. So I say mark that as complete. Then we'll remove old UI policies as well that we don't need. And for this one, what I'll do is you can just add the active flag into the list to make it easier. And then again, we can just turn these 4 off. and then mark that as complete. We're now going to update our dashboard because we moved from using states where we had states number 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 4 used to be closed. Now we're going to refer to close as active is false. So what we'll do is we'll click on configure for the dashboard that we ship with problem management, and that's the dashboard, the overview dashboard here. That's this one. And I will click on the configuration icon, and it tells you what to do here as well. Scroll down to the bottom of the page. Find the problems closed per week chart. Click on the edit content icon. And you will do this for any chart that you've got. If you've added your own charts or you've got your own dashboard, you would go and do it for those as well. But basically, you can see it says problem state is 4. What we're going to do is click on that filter, and we'll change this instead to saying active is false, because that's a better way to actually detect that. And then we can run that. And I don't have any recent data to show that because mine's kind of demo data. But then I just go back to the dashboard, close that menu down. And then what we'll do is we'll click back to guided setup at this point. And then because I've done that, I can just say mark as complete because we finished doing that. And again, if you've got any custom dashboards or charts, you would go and do the same thing on those as well. If you've modified, so if you've added any fields or modified the form layouts, you can actually optionally go and reset your form layouts as well. Or if you've got any mandatory fields, you might want to reset your form layouts to our base version before you start doing anything else. And there's a KB for that as well. So I'll just say that I've done that for now. And then lastly, we're going to make it so that you can search for problems from incidents. So if I click on configure, there's 2 things that we need to do. First one is we need to, and again, it tells you in the embedded help. So for the first one, we want to go to the search context. And we want to enable search on tab. And again, the instructions update to tell you what to do. So I've done that. Just check that and say update. So what that means is when you're in the short description in an incident, updating it, you tab out of that incident. That's when the search will run. And the reason we've done that is that's what's needed to trigger searching for things beyond knowledge articles and beyond catalog items. So if you want to search for problems or incidents, because there's a lot more of those, we want you to tab away from that field first to know that you've actually finished typing in the short description. That's also kind of the default behavior in Workspace. So what you're doing is enabling that. That's something that you would get for as a new customer. So this is how you can get it for an upgrade as well. And then the last thing we need to do is in the actual incident record itself, we just need to say that we will enable the source selector, which is the drop-down list of sources where you swap between problems and incidents and things like that. So we'll just click update on that. And then we can say mark as complete. And that's it. We've finished basically doing all of the stuff with the migration utility. So we've been through all the migration utility. Everything's completed at this point in time. So if we just went and created a new problem quickly, you would see the new form layout that I was showing you before as well. And then we've got the extra tabs. So there's the analysis information with the workaround, the cause notes. The fixed notes is under the resolution. And so, yeah, so that's where all the new fields are. And this is the search stuff that we just enabled as well. But we did that on the incident side. Okay, so that's all of the information on the migration utility. So now let's just jump back to the PowerPoint quickly. So if you do need to restore that required base functionality because you updated or removed some of the stuff that we still need, we want you to restore the base plugins in a specific order. Here's all of the plugins you might have to restore. It depends what you've got enabled on your system as to what will show up or what you've changed from which of these will show up in your specific instance, but we'll give you the order of them and the plugins that you need to do something with. Again, as before, if you've got Paris, Orlando with patch 3 or later, or New York with patch 9 or later, that means the admin can actually do all of this on their own. So you see admin repairable is yes for all of these things. So they don't need any help, any additional help. If you don't meet this requirement, then the state model and the Jakarta plugins were both development plugins. So the best thing to do is to create a high case for these because they need to be activated in the right order, one after the other. So create a high case to get these activated instead, or better yet, wait till you're on the right patch level or write release version, and then you'll be able to do it yourselves without even having to create a high case in the first place. And once you've repaired these plugins, there's a flag in the table that just says repaired. Just make sure you set that to true, because it's not something the utility can detect on its own, and it won't let you move on until you've basically marked all those as being repaired. So that's the extra stuff you need to do if you've modified base functionality as well. So just a quick wrap up. So we've looked at what the state model is, what the migration utility is, how to install it, who to contact if you're on a more complex migration path, including domain separation. There's some additional links over here as well, like there's a blog with a lot of this stuff. There's documentation, there's the 3 KBs we looked at as well. And lastly, if you run into issues using the utility, or you run into issues after you've used the utility on your problem management, it's likely something specific to your incidents, because other customers have been successful. So what we need you to do is to go and create a ServiceNow high case so that support can actually go in and have a look, because we can't diagnose it without getting access to your instance to see what's going on, because it's not been covered by the standard functionality of the migration utility. So that's basically what I wanted to cover. Now we can delve into the questions that people have got.
Yes, Matt. So Lisa, would you like to read out the questions, or should we take it up?
Sure, I'm happy to read the questions from the Q&A. Dave asked earlier this morning, will there be a way to tie a problem record to a story in the ITBM module?
Yes. So basically, this depends on your use case, Dave. So currently, we have this integration of problem management with other modules such as change, improvement initiatives, security incidents, and likewise. So you can also create or customize your ITBM module in such a way to integrate it with problem management. There's no such restriction on it.
Yeah, and one more thing, Dave, is so earlier I mentioned that you can, so a fix for a problem, if you've got the ITBM 2.0, Agile 2.0, you can create defects and enhancements and link those directly from your problem as well. So from a problem perspective, they would just be treated as fixes for the problem. But from the ITBM's perspective, they're basically their stories like defects or enhancements that you would take up.
Okay. Dave also asked, with access, can the cancel be limited to the problem manager or admin?
So every UI action, basically every action is on a problem record is currently limited to a problem coordinator persona, who will be responsible for transitioning the problem through its life cycle, basically working on that problem record. So, and your problem manager and admin has that problem coordinator role. So yeah, so it is currently restricted to a problem coordinator role.
Yes, and that's because they're the ones coordinating the problem with other teams. So the manager is a problem coordinator as well. So if you didn't want anybody to be able to coordinate problems, just don't give them the coordinator role. They can still see the problem if they've got the problem read roles, or if they've got the ITIL role, they just can't manage the problem itself. They can't move it through the life cycle.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to be reading these in order as they came in. So comes out of order in the questions, just note that that's happening. So Ian says, hello, we have started this journey, been on ServiceNow since Aspen. Ooh. And use archive. What happens if you try to restore an archived record after migration?
Yeah, okay. So once you have restored your archive records, those are as good as your live records, right? So, and there is no such restriction on our migration utility that you can only run it once. You can always come back and run it again if you have restored your archive records or created some other records in some new state which you want to again restore. So yeah, as you can see on Matt's screen, when you click on migrate, you will again come to the migration job, and you can move back and again click on migrate records to basically migrate whatever records you have. So you can do the migration multiple times. There's no such restriction on that.
Okay. Dave asks, can you map the assigned to a custom field we had on the old form?
I think this was in regards to the mapping stage. So basically, we are mapping those fields which are actually a mandatory field for certain stages in our new problem state model. So like assign to is one of the mandatory fields there when you go to suppose assess stage in your problem management. That is why we are mapping it. So if you it actually makes no sense if we map it to a custom field or anything. So yeah, so we cannot do that actually. That is not a use case basically.
Ian had question number 2, and remember, he's Mr. Aspen. Is there any additional plugin to add fields that are required for regulatory reporting in North America?
No, so what you're seeing in here is what we provide for now, but we do talk to other customers to see what else is needed for problem in the future. So one thing that you can do, Ian, is if you follow the link to the migration utility blog, there's a place called ideas. You can go and submit ideas, and basically other customers can vote for those ideas. The ideas that get the most votes, there's a threshold, will basically be something that's more likely to make it into our backlog, our roadmap going forward as well. So we don't have anything currently for that, but it doesn't mean we might not do something with that in the future, Ian.
Oh, and just to clarify, that's called the idea portal?
Yes.
Okay, great. You can find that on the community. It's in the top navigation. Masum has 2 questions. If instance has customized dictionary and it comes under warning modifications, then do we need to deactivate all of them, or can they be kept as verified? Will keeping them cause any migration problems?
Yeah, so basically whatever is coming under warning section will not exactly impact your major functionality in your new problem state model. So in that case, that is actually at a user's discretion. You need to go ahead, analyze what can be the impact of your modification. If you're okay with it, then just verify, mark it as verified, and you can move ahead.
Yeah, in the same, yeah, thanks, Priya. In the same way that I did with those ACLs that you saw, we knew the reason that they were showing up, and they don't impact functionality. And that's why we're saying make sure to practice on a full clone of your production system in a sub-production, so that you've tried everything out. You know everything that you need to take care of. You're happy with the outcome and the results, and that problem works properly after you've finished as well. Because we can't do all that for you. We just try and detect, to the best of our abilities, what is a blocking thing versus something that we'd warn you about, versus like an informational thing is, it's more just like, oh yeah, you added some new states. It doesn't change anything. It's okay.
And this is the other part of the question, and I'm not sure if I understand it correctly, but he asks, when migration utility asks to repair the base functionality plugins?
Okay, so basically the question is, when does that repair baseline state comes up? So in your customizations, when you have customized or deleted, removed any of the existing records which is shipped by ServiceNow, if you have customized or you have removed, that will take you to the repair baseline functionality, because we want all those files to be back to its base version. So to get those files to its base version, we have to repair all the plugins so that we can get it to what is actually the baseline version of that particular record.
Yeah, and if you see over here in the embedded help, it basically says the migrate stage. This is where that would come in, this optional piece. So if it applies to your instance, you'll get 2 extra stages you go through 2 extra required. One is preparing the base plugins, which might require you to do something with customer update sets that you've done that. And again, it talks you through what you need to do with those. And the other one is, once you've done that, is then to repair those plugins in a specific order to restore that functionality. And we looked at many different options for this, Priya and Kapil, and this was basically the easiest, most consistent way that as a customer you could actually restore that base functionality, was doing this kind of prepare and restore, repair approach.
Okay, I think that's all we've got. Any more questions? As a quick reminder, you can always post questions that might come to you later on that community link that I've provided. I'll put it into the chat one more time so that you all have it. I can find my chat window. There we go. Oh, Dave also asked on the chat. Oh, I almost missed this one. If it helps, we had a field called IT manager, which would be what the assigned to becomes. So this was David asked some questions earlier. So I'm sorry about that. So Dave was like, would the tie problem record to a story in the ITBM module with access to cancel be limited to the problem manager or admin? Those were some of the questions Dave had asked.
So yeah, the cancelling a problem or a problem task is you need to have one of the problem roles. So to cancel a problem task, you need the problem task analyst or higher. And to cancel a problem, you need to have the problem coordinator or higher. And so, higher meaning like, manager or admin as well. So you can only, so think of those moving between states and taking actions that you would see in the header. All of those are kind of life cycle things. And so to do those, they're restricted to people with those specific problem roles, because we had some customers wanted to, they want their service desk to be able to create problems, but not push them through the life cycle. And if you do want that, that's fine. You can just give them the problem coordinator role as well.
Oh, it's my apologies. Dave said it. This was his question about a field called IT manager. Was around the mapping the custom IT manager to assign to.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So yeah, no problem. So yeah, as Spree has said before, we could only map to fields. Basically, we can only use fields that we have. So that's why we're using the assign to field, because that's the one that's common to problem already. So you might need to do some extra work on your side if you need to basically copy over. But you can still keep your field if you want to use that. It's just for a problem, the individual record needs to be assigned to somebody who's going to own it to move it through its life cycle. That's what assign to means for the problem.
All right, Dave, let us know if we've answered your question, because I know we are a little bit over time, but this is great. We've had some fabulous questions today.
Yeah, and thanks for all the questions, everybody.
Okay, and with that, we do welcome you to post some more questions on that community link. Oh, we've got one more. Thanks, Dave. It was around that was what we were using it for in the old form.
Okay, yeah, and that's as part of redesigning the process. That's one of the things we kind of streamlined down to, is because someone's coordinating this record and then using problem tasks most of the time, we found that most people didn't need multiple kind of assign to fields anymore. So that's how we streamlined that as we did this new process.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, we thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to having you and join some of our other Ask the Expert events. You can always find them listed on the community, and hopefully this team for ITSM will join us again soon. And let us know by posting in the community or sending it to community@servicenow.com your suggestions for future shows. And with that, we thank you all for joining us today, and have a lovely, lovely day.